Hello, everyone. You're listening to Kino Lefter, Canada's #1 socialist movie podcast. I'm Abdul at Socialist Raptor.
I'm Laura at _Saturn Return.
And I'm Evan at McDonald Tweets, and we've got a collaboration. It's not long in the making because we just messaged you, but I think it's something we've wanted to do for a while, and a fantastic film this week. We've got Will Menaker from Chapo. Will, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Great to be talking movies with the brightest minds of the Great White North.
Exactly. It's we're on the forefront of politics right now. What movies are good? What movies are bad? Who won at the box office? We're a liberatory podcast, I think.
I mean, will Tinseltown do Boffo BO when COVID-19 goes KO? No, it's good to be here. I agreed to do the show because I was told that this is a pro-Wexit movie podcast as well, and I'm just here to support Albertan independence.
Thank you.
Like me and all the Chapo FYM guys, Aaron especially, all the gang, all the Chapo Canada heads. They all support independence for Alberta.
I'm on a Twitter campaign right now to guest on the Wexit podcast because they do have one, and I think it's sexist that they haven't asked me to be on yet.
I had a shipment of flags coming pre-COVID that were just like BG Alberta and Albertans women's protection units flags, just like patches I could put on my big boy camo as we walk through the streets of Edmonton demanding a hard Wexit. But this week, we thought, what perfect movie to do for quarantine times than the story of a sundowning, old man living in his mansion, not allowed to leave, brain racked by syphilis, very Joe Biden energy. We are doing Capone with Tom Hardy, Josh Trank's comeback movie, allegedly. Evan, do you want to roll into what the movie's about? Because I'm still trying to figure that out.
I'd love to, Abdul. So I think this movie has a very good opening crawl. It's like, Al Capone was busted on tax charges, and he was in jail for 10 years, and then they let him out in Florida, and this is the last year of his fucking life. So it starts, and he's at Thanksgiving dinner, and his granddaughter's like, "Oh, Pop, why should we be proud?" And he's like, "'Cause we're Italian and we're rich and fuck them." Which, this is an Italian excellence movie, by the way. So we skip forward a little bit. Al Capone has neurosyphilis, and his brain is turning into jello a la Chris Benoit. So most of the movie is Al Capone chewing on a cigar, sitting on a dock, muttering like Danny DeVito's Penguin, while visions from his past and nightmares kind of intervene in his normal life. And then he begins a quest to find some money.
Yeah, there's like a $10 million MacGuffin that's not really a MacGuffin that occurs throughout the movie. His family's just coming up to him, not wiping the drool from his mouth, but just asking him where the money is over and over and over again. At a certain point, his cigars get replaced with carrots. So at least the back end of the second act of this movie is Tom Hardy walking around his estate going while chewing on carrots. And I'm not making that up. That is a good majority of this film.
It's a bold performance for sure. A lot of strong choices.
No, there is a character who is a doctor played by Kyle MacLachlan, and they really missed a beat in the carrot scenes for not having Al Capone say, or Fonz as he's referred to in this movie, say, "What up, Doc?"
Massive mistake.
Yeah, it's all that happens. The climax of the movie is him just imagining himself murdering his entire family with a gold-plated machine gun, which is spectacularly weird because it doesn't really seem to like mean anything, or if it did, it went over my head completely. Um, yeah, I don't know what else was there to this movie. It really
No, I
is
mean, like
nothing.
that's kind of the amazing thing about it is, like you said, we're going to summarize the plot of it in the first half of the show, and I was just like, how long you want to go today? Because it's not gonna leave us with a lot to riff on. I mean, it's like going into this, and I guess like now that I've seen it, like I do. Like I appreciate a certain level of ambition in deciding to do a movie about Al Capone, like a figure that's been, like portrayed in film and TV so many times before, as this like outsized, larger than life arch villain and crime boss, like the OG of the boss of all bosses of like American crime history. But
Level
to do
35.
it about, yeah, level 35 boss,
Mafia
exactly.
City shit.
But to do it about yes, the end of his life when he was living in Florida, like fishing in his swimming pool because syphilis had destroyed his brain, and and just to sort of I don't know, de-glamorize or like take away the power of this figure by just like having him be an hour and a half of Tom Hardy in a bathrobe, just drooling on himself and shitting himself and just like forgetting where he is. And I mean, Abdul, I mean, like in my struggle to like wring meaning out of this movie, halfway through it, when I stopped taking notes, I was like, well, what the fuck is this about? What's going on here? Like, what is the meaning here? And the only thing I could glean from it is that like, it's a movie about trying to get Joe Biden to run for president in the middle of a global pandemic. That's like, it's just a metaphor for the Biden campaign. Like that's all I can get from this. And it's just like, and also like like going into this movie, I just like more than anything, I was just looking forward to what kind of voice is Tom Hardy going to do in this role. And like you said, like it's just what's he going to come up with. And it's to that extent, I was not disappointed by this, because this was kind of a perfect role for like the hunky mumble guy Tom Hardy, who just kind of like, he doesn't really like I think Tom Hardy is a very good actor. I think he's great, actually. But like, he really likes roles where you don't have to like talk. You know what I mean? Like you can just kind of like and just sort of mutter to yourself and just be like, this is his most incomprehensible sort of voice that he's done in a movie yet. And I wrote it down. I think like I would best describe the voice he does as late stage syphilis Al Capone as sort of a cross between Leon Redbone and like Harvey Firestein.
This is like the zenith of his Venom voice. Like, this is just that taken to its like extreme endpoint. I watched this last night and I saw that like there's a scene here where Al Capone shits his pants, and then that thing came out today of Joe Biden shitting and farting live on air, and I just started thinking about what actor will play Joe Biden in quarantine 30 years from now, and like a loose remake of this where they've swapped Al Capone and Biden like the roles, because it really does feel very much like what's happening on wherever Joe Biden's estate is.
There were two scenes in this movie where Al Capone shits himself. There were two one of them quite graphic, of him shitting himself.
I think to go back to the voice for a little bit, this is a top tier Tom Hardy voice. I think one aspect that he may have brought in during his research was Tim Allen from Home Improvement when he's doing like the Tool Man voice. Because there's a moment where he pisses himself sitting on the dock. He's like, "Oh no, where did that come from?" And it's just like, from your bladder, Fonz. Like, I thought that was really fantastic. And yeah, he's going full dipe at a few moments in this movie. Like, there is that ending scene. It's an image I don't think I'll forget anytime soon, of Tom Hardy full diaper with a gold-plated Tommy gun mowing down just like day workers. Like,
yeah.
It really makes you think.
I want the Tom Hardy saying platypus as my text notification.
Yeah, I think actually, oh my god, I totally forgot about that. That was my favorite scene in the movie. We got platypus. And I also like my favorite bits of dear beloved Fonz in this movie is that like Hardy gives like half of his dialogue in Italian, and there's subtitles, and like he goes into Italian when he gets like very angry or agitated. You know, like so I thought that was probably realistic, and like he goes into like old Italian guy mode when like he's calling his wife a bitch or like shitting himself or just like ranting at like imaginary people who are spying on him or not imaginary in this case, where he's just like animale, animale, like.
I love the choice of like font and stuff for the subtitles. Like they're so big and they're very serifed. Like they're extremely grand subtitles. They're not just like your standard movie subtitles, which is like it's like everything about this movie is just filled with like inscrutable choices, but that is definitely chief among them.
It's very operatic to just scream like assassino at someone, you know?
Yeah.
This movie is a comeback movie by Josh Trank, who directed Chronicle and the like allegedly directed Fantastic Four, like the really shitty one with Miles Teller. And it's an amazing comeback movie because Evan, you mentioned this before we recorded. It felt like Josh Trank sees like Al Capone as some sort of metaphor for himself, because on the set of Fantastic Four, he like got into fights with Miles Teller, trashed the house he was living in, had his dog shit all over the floor, and would like walk around the set telling the actors when to blink and when to breathe when they were shooting takes.
It's alpha behavior, right? Like, if you want to make it in Hollywood, you got a big dick, and sometimes that means making possibly one of the worst blockbusters of all time with his Fantastic Four movie. I love like the post production discourse on that, because like I think the day of its release he tweeted like, I made an incredible version of Fantastic Four that you'll probably never see, but that's Hollywood. And like his half of the movie is dog shit. Like it's really not good. Like they really only like did the third act for him because he got fired and then the producers had to direct the movie for him. But I thought Chronicle was okay. It's just kind of like a early 2010s like, oh, this is a dangerous indie movie about teens who have a video camera, and maybe there's some sci-fi stuff going on. And it's like, I'll take it, that's okay.
Actually,
but
No, I was gonna say, Abdul bringing it up, like I had totally forgotten all of the lore about Josh Trank and like on the set of Fantastic Four, and like he did trash some big house that he was staying in, and his dog shit everywhere, and was like he was like living in a tent that he set up in the living room and like not coming out for like hours or days at a time, and like honestly like it actually like brings a lot of like meaning to a movie that I was just dumbstruck about. Like, well, what the fuck? What is this? This is like an old man dying for an hour and a half. But like, yeah, no, I honestly, I think this movie is his sort of confession or his psychological portrait of himself directing Fantastic Four.
I can't wait for like Geraldo Rivera to open up the like Fox vault and try to retrieve like the original cut of Josh Trank's Fantastic Four.
Release the Trank cut. Release the Trank cut.
Exactly.
Fox, you're on notice.
Like Capone is the Room 237 to his Fantastic Four.
It
like,
is.
there's intricate symbolism detailing how he faked the moon landing within Capone. But yeah, it's definitely autobiographical, because like the major themes of Capone, other than like brain death, which like I don't know if he's experiencing, are like fake friends and life after cancellation.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a natural fit.
Actually, this movie actually really makes a lot more sense to me now. Like, because I was dumbfounded watching it. I was like, well, what? Like, who is this movie for? And I just think, like, if you understand it as a very personal movie about Josh Trank, I think it actually makes sense.
I totally had the same, because I knew that going in, I felt like this was going to be a rough go. So I planned on splitting it up over 2 sessions. But when I started it, I just couldn't stop watching. I just had to understand this. It was like a Rubik's Cube of a film, just so perplexing.
And Evan, you brought up The Shining as well, and like that was actually the movie that I thought about the most watching this movie. Like this felt like, the whole kind of like the centerpiece of the movie is a kind of overlook hotel style tour through the mansion where he's like right before he has like a second stroke and completely, so just the real dividing line is when the carrots come out of his mouth, and when the cigars come out and the carrots go in. But yeah, he has this like this long sort of like nighttime odyssey through his Florida mansion where he begins to like like the gold room in The Shining. Like he goes down to like the basement and there's like a big party down there and they're like, "Oh, we're all waiting for you, Al. Like it's your birthday," and everyone loves him. And then like he relives some like horrible murders that like he saw or participated in. But it's like it's this very like Nicholson, like Jack Torrance just sort of walking around the hotel losing his mind vibe. So like that's kind of the centerpiece of this movie. And I thought but like the thing is with this is like on the surface, like it's like as crazy as it sounds, it's a kind of an interesting idea of portraying Al Capone like this and having such a singular actor in Tom Hardy being like making like the very big and baffling but at the same time like really interesting choices that he does with roles. But like it just what didn't work for me with this movie is that there were so many of these like sort of like really ham-fisted attempts at profundity or like grasping for moments of like surrealism and kind of like a kind of phantasmagorical quality to like these themes of like memory and regret and like violence in his life, but like just none of them landed at all. Like he's chasing a gold balloon around and like looking at a boy version of himself, and then like a tidal wave takes him to Italy and stuff. It's just like it just I think it's like they were trying to like do an entire movie that captured like the last half hour of The Irishman, but like but none of the 3 hours that came before it that like made it so crushing and kind of haunting. And it's just him doddering about the old people home.
I think about like a film like Mr. Holmes where Ian McKellen plays an elderly Sherlock Holmes, and the hook of that film is so good. It's like Sherlock Holmes is old and his memory is failing, but he still has to solve a crime. You know what I mean? Like, but in this movie, it's like Fonts is dying and his memory is failing, but he's not trying to like do a crime. He's not even trying to like find the money he lost. That's everyone else in the movie. Like his goal is, and just him in the movie walking around is just to be like a sundowning old man. Apparently IRL his mental function at the time of death was about 12 years old. In this movie, it's significantly younger than that. He's like barely a toddler by the time this movie is over.
Essentially a can of beans, like really.
And like what was I gonna say? There's like and like you like the missing money. This idea that there's some like he buried somewhere like $10 million before going to jail, and there's this like huge jackpot out there for like the fake friends that surround him. His estranged bastard son is another plot point in this movie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That goes nowhere. Doesn't matter at all. Don't care in the slightest. Because it was like the last shot of the movie is that like his wife, played by Linda Cardinelli, like allows his like his lost son, who presumably is not hers, to return home and just sit next to him on the porch and have like a dad moment. And it's almost just like it seemed to me like the movie was really saying like the most evil thing Al Capone ever did was like not be a father to this kid, and not like the dozens, if not hundreds, of like ghastly, grisly murders that he oversaw or did himself. And it's just there's a lot of stuff about like him watching movies and listening to the radio. There's a scene where he sings along to The Wizard of Oz.
Best scene in the movie. And
then there's this like him and Matt Dillon do like a duck soup sort of routine with each other. The Ciccolini being cross-examined by Groucho from Duck Soup, and like Matt Dillon's a ghost. Apparently, like that's just introduced. I was just like, who is this character? Like he shows up and he's like, "Hey, those were the good old days, Al." And then like he goes away and then he comes back and it's just like, "Oh, I was a ghost this whole time. Here are my eyes. Here are my eyes." And like this is like that was another scene that was trying to be sort of like nightmarish and gross and kind of like Lynchian in a way that it just didn't work. It was just very flat.
And like I'm so curious as to what behind the scenes of this movie was, like how Josh Trank got buy-in or like described Tom Hardy's behavior to be, cuz like so much of the movie is just him grunting. It's just him grunting at things without like any real like motivation or purpose. He's just reacting to things while having a carrot in his mouth. It's incredibly funny actually, but it's supposed to be sad. I can't think of like an actual point in this film where I think I felt anything.
No,
You know?
no, me
Yeah.
neither. Other than maybe vague confusion.
Yeah.
But no, I was gonna say earlier, like the only actual like plot in this movie is about this missing $10 million, and like that's just a giant red herring. Like they wrap that up at the end in like like the pre credits like epilogue or whatever. They're like the money was never found, and it's just like, oh, okay. And like but like the only action, like it's like there's like the feds are bugging his house and like extorting his doctor played by the diaper doctor played by Kyle MacLachlan to like see if they can get like any information out of him about where he buried this, and it all just doesn't mean anything. It like doesn't go anywhere, which I guess like in a better movie I could like be like, oh, that's kind of an interesting choice, like to make it kind of just a Shaggy Dog story, or like that the money, that all this shit doesn't really matter. But like again, in the movie that we have here, it's just like everything else is just sort of introduced and then just doesn't go anywhere. Like there's like even finding out that like nothing comes of the money isn't even like a satisfying payoff, or it's not even like a joke or some like weird twist or anything that adds a kind of like an ironic finality to anything in the movie. It's just sort of like, here's some things that happened when an old man was losing his mind.
Yeah, and I think part of the tonal confusion in this is also just how gross and graphic it is, and how Tom Hardy's physicality is just so like his eyes are like bloodshot red and dripping. He's always caked in like spit and pissing himself, and it's never it's kind of done for. It's not this moment that adds a lot of pathos because you don't see him, young and vibrant and strong. I think you see one photo of him where he's like looking handsome and sharp in his very large pants suit. But there's nothing else about it that kind of points to this decline. You just are open on him in this state.
No, and like the other thing was like the FBI plot. There's this like young go-getter like FBI agent who's like on the case of Capone and his missing money and the buried Capone treasure. And like there's a scene where he is like, he meets with there's like one scene of him as like a character like independent from just a guy who's seen like in a truck listening to headphones of like a surveillance tapes or whatever. And he like talks to like the higher up at the FBI who's like, "Hey, like I got some news for you, buddy. We don't give a shit about Al Capone." And this is like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and you should never remind the viewer at this crucial point in the movie what they're feeling themselves, which is that I don't give a fuck about Al Capone or his missing money. And then like the guy is just like, okay, let me stay on the case. Like there's got to be something here, and like he just sets it up by being like, you know what the difference between Al Capone and Hitler is? Al Capone's still alive. And I'm just like, it was just this last step to like of meaning of like this is what level of a villain he is, but like he's obviously so weakened, but he's like living in luxury in Florida, and it was just like, and then the guy just never heard from again. It never heard from again. You see him like he's hanging some sort of clemency deal over Kyle MacLachlan because like obviously he's done some crime and he's going to go to jail unless they help them. That's never discussed again. Never brought up again.
I find it very telling that the first title for this movie was Fonzo, and then they, on April 15th, 2020, they retitled it Capone, just because I think they understood that no one would watch this movie. Even watching the trailer, no one had any idea what was it about or anything like that. Like, it's just, it's such a, like, weirdly abstract piece of art, and, like, even to, like, dig into the politics of it, it has such a bizarrely confused sense of like justice. It's no like interrogation of like, you could actually make a movie about this and be like, could Al Capone have even like been reformed if Alcatraz wasn't such a shitty place, or like carceral or something like that. But no, like it's just Josh Trank doing like a Josh Trank, I'm trying to think of the word, like it felt extremely narcissistic from like everyone involved. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the FBI should have called Al Capone in instead of calling him out, which they do in this movie. It was really backwards, and you hate to see it.
I did like the one scene where they were like the FBI guy gets his chance to interview Al Capone. And like it's just sort of like, and I guess like I don't know, maybe this is interesting in a way that like at every single moment in this movie where there could be like any tension or like drama introduced. It subverted at every single point. And like in that scene, like the guy's just like, okay, like, give me your name, date of birth, and occupation. And the lawyer answers for him because he's like on fucking Pluto. And then he's just like, where's the money, Al? Where's the money? And then he just like looks him dead in the eye and then just like over a good 10 or 20 seconds just shits. Just excellent sound design. And it really reminded me of that scene in Inside Llewyn Davis where like after he sings that very like touching heartfelt song about fishing to his dad, he just like looks at him and then just realizes that he just shit himself.
Yeah, like, and I think about a film like this compared to a film like The Untouchables, which has, The Untouchables is so much fucking fun. It has,
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, it's just
I love The Untouchables.
And think about like Al Capone in The Untouchables, or Joe Pesci and like Robert De Niro in The Irishman, and like these are two great polar opposites of how you make like an incredible gangster movie. And like Josh Trank thought he was making the serious sad one, but like veered way more towards the silly goofy one like as he was doing it. Also, did you know LP from Run the Jewels did the music for this?
Yeah, I did. I knew that. I knew that going into it, and I was like, "Oh, this could be interesting." But like, I don't remember anything about the score.
Yeah.
It was barely in the movie at all. Like, and it was I know what LP sounds like, so I was like, "Well, this is very much like you're having a score that cuts very much against like the period and tone that like you're going for. You're gonna have music that's like just like a wild mismatch is what you would expect." But I really don't remember like his music or like I can't think of a single moment in the movie that I remember that I was like, oh, that's LP. That's an LP beat there.
One element that I think makes Capone shitty compared to, some great movies like Goodfellas or The Untouchables is like good mob movies understand that like people in organized crime live in a heightened reality like that they believe in, right? There's like, La Cosa Nostra and everything and like family and like they 100% believe all of their own bullshit, and to like ground it I think makes it really dull. And like you were saying before, Will, like what makes The Irishman cool is like everything before, you see like, the nursing home and, oh, you're just going to die alone reflecting on all of the mistakes of your life. It's like, oh, I live this like incredible life, squeezing guys for money. And Goodfellas too does this where like the movie is like, it's just these guys hanging out and having fun. Aren't they cool? And then they like brutally murder Spider, right? So it's like, it's up to the audience to say like, oh, this is an interesting contrast. But I think it's a bold choice to just have Tom Hardy pissing and shitting all over a movie for 90 minutes, just like, like squawking like the penguin. Okay, like, I love it. Like,
yeah, no, he did do the Danny DeVito penguin is, I think, very, very instructive for like a lot of where he got this role from. But you know what? Like with Tom Hardy, like he goes for it, and like I said, like he makes these like for an actor who could be like A-list, like leading man hunk, and has done those roles. Like he's in Venom, and that's why I loved Venom so much, is because they were like, it was like a shitty Marvel movie in every way, but like Tom Hardy was just like, well, mind if I while out for just like this voice for 2 hours? And it's so odd. Like he's the only one acting at all, or like making any kind of like acting choices. And like in this movie is the same. Like the rest of the cast, it has some good actors in there, like Linda Cardinelli, Kyle MacLachlan, Matt Dillon is in it. And like it's just he's the only one who appears to be like performing at all. And maybe that's again like part of the choices made in this movie, but there's a couple indelible images though. There's one scene where like when he has the carrot in his mouth, and there's just like a bead of fucking saliva just pooling up on the end of the carrot, just waiting to drop off of it. And it was like I said, you could say like, I mean, like there's a lot that goes wrong in this movie, but there is a couple of very memorable like images or scenes in it. I'll give it that.
That's like the thing that I found it so compelling about it, because it was just so confusing, but also him wandering around going quack quack and like talking about drawing the pictures and that kind of stuff. Like that's what kept me going.
And I mean, like, I think the comparison to The Irishman is interesting. I mean, it's not a fair one because, like, I wouldn't want it. Like, if I made a movie, I would not want anyone to compare it to like anything Martin Scorsese's ever done. But like, I think like in the same way, like that was Scorsese's stab at like doing a revisionist take on like all the movies that people so heavily associate with his style and his career. of like the gangster movie, the Goodfellas, Casino, shit like that, where it's just like he gives you all the same content, but the tone of The Irishman is like so dramatically different than Goodfellas. Because like you said, Evan, like Goodfellas, like from the first fucking scene, you're just like, these guys are cool. I want to be like them. It's fun. It's glamorous. Like they're fucking, they're going to the Copa. They're fucking doing whatever they want. They're hanging with their friends. They're killing people. Whereas like The Irishman, like no part of Frank Sheeran's life is like cool or glamorous at all. At all. Like there's not a single moment of like fun in The Irishman where you're like where you are seduced a little bit by the evil to be like, oh, like I can see what's cool about this. Whereas like Frank Sheeran is like it's so fucking boring. It really does, like, I don't mean the movie was boring, but it just shows you like how fucking squalid and just like bleak and just like just ugly like every single aspect of his life is, that he sells his soul for, essentially, but like he doesn't even get to have any fun. Whereas this is just like, I don't even know. Like, it's hard even to call this a gangster movie. Like, even though it's about Al Capone, it really is just kind of this very weird and like baffling movie about like living with someone like an elderly person who's experiencing dementia at the end of their life. I mean, it's kind of sad, I guess, but like again, like I didn't feel any of those emotions for anyone in the movie. It was just like you said, Laura, I was just kind of confused the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that Linda Cardinelli deserves to be cast in something other than Guilty Italian Wife. I was just watching it. I've been rewatching Mad Men in quarantine, and she's an incredible actress, but that's just, she's been so tightly pegged to that. I remember her, she was in the Green Book, I think, doing the same thing, being like, with her little axe in her hands and her hips, mad in the kitchen.
In like a better...
she was by the way, she was my favorite of Don Draper's many affairs on Mad Men.
Oh, she was so
his downstairs neighbor, and then like Don gets her son out of going to Vietnam. It's like the husband, that was like the ultimate cuck job on that husband.
One of the ways in which like marketing can make or break a movie, like this is something I was thinking when I was watching this, is like if they marketed this as the perfect quarantine movie. Like, we are all Tom Hardy in our bathrobe, walking around our houses, slowly, like, sundowning because we can't leave, just, like, brain rotting over time. I feel like this movie could have been, like, a sleeper hit if people went into it expecting some sort of, like, quarantine relation.
It did do well. No, it wasn't marketed like that, but it did do well, and I think it, like, broke some records for, like, a on-demand release, if I'm not mistaken.
That means
more Josh think about this. I mean, I'm going out on a limb here, and I'm just saying this movie has got to have like the audience rating on the people who like rented this movie has got to be so low, because when you say Al Capone starring Tom Hardy, the expectations going into that are so violently, like flouted by this movie. Like I really have a hard time wondering that, like, if anyone went into this movie thinking like gangster movie with Tom Hardy where he's Al Capone and was super excited for that, is going to be brutally disappointed by this film.
And you don't even get the gaudy effect of like, I'm here to watch a movie about respecting Italians, right? And like, our heritage and where we come from, right? It's just like, it's this icon of American crime. I was watching Superman 2 a little while ago, and I miss when supervillains or just people in general would call themselves the greatest criminal mind of our time. And like, I wish Tom Hardy said that in the movie, but yeah, it's just like, it is a movie about, diapers, carrots, people leaning over your shoulder saying, "Oh, what do you got there, Fonz? Is that a map to the money?" So, like, does Josh Trank hate Tom Hardy? I feel like that might be an issue, because it seems like when he casts like a leading man, like Miles Teller or something, I think Miles Teller is not a very good actor, but he was in a very good movie, Whiplash. It's just like, I feel like it might be like this inferiority complex where it's like, oh, Tom Hardy, I'm really excited to meet with you about this Al Capone movie I'm doing. Yeah, what is it? Well, good question. You're going to shoot an alligator at one point screaming, was it worth it, to him for eating the fish that you just caught? Like, I think I actually did enjoy Capone because I was laughing hysterically during most of it. Because, yeah, I think it is an experience unlike most of the movies we've watched so far in like 2020.
It's interesting. And I feel like that kind of role is catnip to Tom Hardy. They're like, you can just go buck wild. You could do whatever the fuck you want, whatever voice you want, interpret neurosyphilis, however that strikes you, whatever you hear when you hear that, just go for it.
You're right about Tom Hardy. Like I was saying earlier, like that's why he sort of interests me as an actor, because like he could be like a textbook like leading man, like hunk who could still win Oscars. But like I think in the choices that he makes and like the roles that he does, he seems to have a real affinity for any role that can like either make him like ugly and then or like just physically and like graceless and charmless in like every possible way. Like even like in Mad Max Fury Road, it's just again like he has like maybe 10 lines of dialogue in that movie. He likes to act with like little like head ticks and little like sort of like grunts and like curls of the lip. He doesn't really like to, you know, I don't know, chew dialogue or anything like that. He likes, like I said, he likes to mutter and sort of potter about. So this is a perfect role for him.
Totally, and I think that the comparisons that like people always make the same comparison with him to Marlon Brando, just like kind of the shuffling about like very wordless, marble-mouthed kind of delivery style. And I think that it's interesting to invoke this kind of thing because it's obviously in dialogue with a lot of those other movies, ostensibly. But that connection to me just like seems really tenuous because I think that Tom Hardy is just a guy that loves to take risks and loves to just go balls to the walls with things. And when he succeeds, it's incredible, but when he fails, it's incomprehensible.
You see a movie like Locke. Has anyone seen that with Tom Hardy?
I have not. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's like an hour and a half in one location. It's just him having conversations with people while driving between two cities. Like it's just his face talking for a bunch and stuff like that. And it's like, he can act with range. He can act verbally. He like obviously chooses not to. But, to compare him to Marlon Brando is, like, such a superficial comparison. You know what I mean? Like, Tom Hardy, as far as I understand, is, like, he's not method. He is
method.
Like,
he is method. Yeah.
Is he? Oh, fuck. I had no idea. So, wait, was he actually trying to do, like, Bane on The Dark Knight Rises? Like, what?
He's a method actor.
He got yoked. He actually went back in time as a child and served a prison sentence in the D.C. island of Santa Prisca and dedicated his life to conquering criminals with his massive muscles. So I respect it.
No, he did workouts that were only like from the turn of the century, where he just lifts giant like sort of triangle shaped pieces of lead, and like barbells that are like two like perfect like spheres connected by a bar. He wore like a unitard and stuff.
Yep.
And, like
a big handlebar mustache. His like arm training was just like slamming a hammer into that thing that like he's trying to hit the bell over and over and over again.
The carnival game. Yeah.
Like it's weird to see him in like. Because I think one of his first films was like Star Trek Nemesis, where he played Captain Picard's clone.
Picard's Romulan clone.
And
wonderful.
He was so strung out on heroin in that film that you can barely tell it's like the Tom Hardy we know and love. Like he looks so pale and so sickly. So I mean, like I'm happy for him. It's just like, where does he go from here? Like this and Venom are like a loose duology of Tom Hardy weird voice movies, and like what like property or IP can he attach this voice to next?
I think they take place in the same universe. I think Capone is actually an unofficial sequel to Venom about what happens to Eddie Brock when the goop leaves his body forever, and he can't get the goop back, and he's like missing his imaginary friend, and he has nothing to do but just piss and shit himself.
There is one critic who did love and adore Capone, someone who's largely outside the mainstream. It actually might be worth talking about him for a second, because Will, you mentioned you also love Armand White of the National Review as much as we do. Like my personal...
I honestly like you could say it's a troll because Armand White is a troll, but like honestly, Armand White is like one of the only like professional film critic writers that I think is worth reading at all.
Yeah.
He's
and like his takes are so monumentally like ridiculous that like, and I think he's doing it on purpose, but like he really is like one of the few like professional film critics that isn't just like on this like fucking like human centipede of like Hollywood dick sucking.
I think he became. I think he's a born poster, and he just started writing before posting was invented. So
Yes,
he had to
yes.
find a way to express these extreme contrarian views. Just be like, actually, Jack and Jill is the best movie ever, and it's a Greek tragedy, and this is why.
Laura, you bring up Jack and Jill, and I've been thinking about Armand all week because in my apartment building, right by like my elevator, there's like a little nook where people leave like books and just like little things around their house they're trying to give away for free. And someone was giving away a Blu-ray copy of Jack and Jill, so I was just like, oh, it's gonna scoop this one up for my boy Armand, who regards the Adam Sandler plays a brother and sister as like one of the greatest like comedy tragedies of like the modern era.
Exactly. He literally does compare it to Greek tragedy, and he says that any kind of comedy that doesn't have any regard for your own sense of embarrassment is like the highest level of the form.
And he's
which I just
like
think is fascinating.
so good at articulating his like trollish viewpoints. Like he's not doing that like very modern day film critic thing of like recapping the movie and saying, "Oh, the performances were good and the story was good, therefore it is a good movie." He's like he has some deep cuts in his reviews. He has some like really like elliptical film knowledge that he loves to like play in. He's like a very entertaining writer. I personally think he's the best writer at the National Review from a purely readability
Oh, he's like
level.
oh my god, yeah. I mean, that's not even close. And like and again, like if you compare him to any other like of the like sort of reactionary like movie or cultural critics, like fucking like Kyle Smith or Sonny Bunch, who are just milksop bores, like top to bottom, just 1000% bitch made, the most like the most like predictable just drivel imaginable. Like Armond White, like he cannot be touched, he cannot be fucked with by like any side of the culture war. Armond White has transcended it.
He says that I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry is better than Brokeback Mountain. He's like, that's a better gay
Incredible
movie.
take.
King. Like
Ang Lee,
yeah,
he canceled.
dude, yeah, no, he can't be fucked with. You can try, but you will fail.
And like his
Well,
his cachet as a black gay man too is incredible because it allows him to just slough off any criticism anyone ever gives him. Like he occupies such a perfect space in like cultural criticism that is legitimately he is the untouchable of like, you know, movie criticism or like, you know, the film reviewing world.
Two of my favorite things about Armond White, he had this list of like his favorite films of the decade. Two of them were Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. So I mean, I respect it. And I think he also got thrown out of the New York Film Critics Circle Awards for heckling Steve McQueen, director of 12 Years a Slave, and reviewed it as his dud of the week. So like it's incredible. Like he's almost like an Alex Jones-esque figure in that way, where like on some level his life is theater and he understands that, but like how sad must it be? Or does he just like live off of, he's like, I don't know, he's like the computer president in the Fallout games, where like he just like needs the pain of the world to continue existing.
No, Laura, I think you're right. I think he is a pure poster. He is a born poster, and he has poster's courage that none of these other like New York film critics they're all cowards. And so like, but I just love the idea of getting kicked out of the New York Film Critics Circle because you didn't like 12 Years a Slave. And it's just like, okay, even if it's a good movie or you think it's defensible, or oh, how could you possibly give it a bad review? It's just like what I like about him, even when he's wrong, is that it's so clear when like a movie comes out that's like the critic movie that everyone has to like, and he just so reflexively goes against that, and then like it is reactionary and reflexive to a certain degree that leads to like some very like I don't know, you know, how should I put this? I don't know, perplexing choices or critical takes that diverge wildly from my own taste, but like I respect it, and like even though I know he's maybe doing it like just as a joke or as a troll or something, I like the idea of reflexively shitting on the Phantom Thread or like Tarantino or Scorsese or like any of the big like film critic like A24 movies, or he's just like shits all over it, and then he's just like, I'm going to tell you about. I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry, like the Kevin James, Adam Sandler canon. You know, like Armond White hated Uncut Gems. You know, because that was like his boy Sandler being absorbed into like the A24 cool like indie like art movie like pipeline.
And like just the fact that people get mad at him, the fact that people expend the energy to get mad at Armond White is incredible. Because he didn't like your favorite, movie, or he didn't like your Marvel movie of the year. Like I remember he was getting like a bunch of hate mail when like District 9 came out because he ruined its perfect Rotten Tomatoes score by giving it a negative review, and people were so. It was the first time I heard of him. People were so fucking pissed, and it's just
Armin gets that, like, the fans of anything, podcasts especially, but certainly movies, are stupid little pigs, and they should never ever be shown any respect. You should never cater to their whining or their taste, shall we say?
My favorite, I think, paragraph from Armand White's National Review of Capone, which we're not going to read the whole thing because a lot of it's just boring, but he says, in Capone, Trank takes on the gangster movie vogue. He forces Capone himself and generations of his admirers entranced by such movies as The Godfather, Scarface, and even TV's The Sopranos into unexpected moral confrontation. Haunted by regrets, he can't control his bodily functions, and the family hanging on his palatial Florida estate.
It's literally that annoying Twitter format that's like, you missed the point by idolizing them, is what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this sickly pale Capone has a carrot stuck in his face where a stogie used to be, his eyes shining with ruined romance and pathetic masculine prowess, which, like, as a statement is incredibly layered. I don't know where to begin deconstructing that. I don't know if pathetic masculine prowess, if that oxymoron even plays in this movie, because he's just bloodshot. Like, they just put red eye drops in him and told him to grunt a lot. But
Abdul,
it could be.
I think you're missing a really critical paragraph, which is the opening statement of this article.
Oh,
I think that we should chew on this sentiment for a little bit, because it says,
meditate.
It seems almost incredible that we are living in an age when the media conspires with a particular political wing to control thoughts and behavior and imagination so completely that even art works against us. That is the surprise revelation of Josh Trank's Capone, starring Tom Hardy. I think I've read this paragraph about 100 times because I just can't wrap my little pea brain around it. I don't know what he means.
Well, okay, because Josh Trank and the film Capone are like they're based. They're going against the cathedral and the deep state, and they're charting a path out of liberal hegemony and mind control via popular culture, via a movie that just features a man soiling himself repeatedly.
Like, it's so fascinating because like he imagines that okay, like, Hollywood is liberal, correct, but like there's this like reflexive desire to have like, why aren't there more conservative voices in Hollywood? We're gonna have our own movies and they're gonna be great. And then you get shit churned out like, Pure Flix or Assassin 33 AD, a classic. Like, it's like, I don't even see how this is like conservative other than like Armand's need to like have like the meaning of the movie explained at the end by the director. Like, the Josh Trank walks out and he's like, and that's why crime never pays. And then the credits roll and it's like, thank God, finally, someone said it.
Crime literally doesn't pay in this movie because you find out that no one ever finds his hidden money.
And then the back-to-back of Armond White. This is why Armond White is legitimately brilliant, because he has like a paragraph where he compares Capone to like Bertolt Brecht's The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui and like a whole bunch of other plays, including Henry IV. But then in the next paragraph, he has a line where he says, he has full-blown dementia, says an FBI agent monitoring Capone's encampment, and this fact is unmistakable.
Yes, correct.
like the oscillating in like Armond White's writing is incredible because it's like it's stupid guy shit, but then he's also pissing off like theater nerds at the same time.
I mean, he brings up Brecht, and I mean, to talk about The Irishman again, my co-host Matt described what Scorsese does in that movie as being very Brechtian, as like constantly distancing, like at every moment, like distancing the audience from like the subject matter. And I pick up a lot of that in Capone, but like the weird thing about this movie is that it's distancing you at every point, but from what? You know, it's just sort of like there's nothing there to begin with. It's just
Yeah.
it's just it feels distant the whole time. It just feels very very ephemeral and weird, but like not to any effect, or like doesn't make me feel anything or think about anything. It's very strange.
I love this other sentence too, which I also think gets to the core of Armand White's politics, which is the hip hop generation, which took gangster movies to heart, channeling the crack and Reagan era social frustration, identified with revenge and bravado, but was not big on consequences. So it's like what you're saying. These
The Bill
kids,
Cosby thing.
exactly. These kids are sagging their pants and they love Scarface.
But again, to look at this movie, what are the consequences for Al Capone? Like, he had to do 10 years in Alcatraz, which probably, like, killed him, basically. But, he's living in a mansion in Florida, and it's like, oh, he has to sell off some statues to, like, make the rent or whatever. But it's
A
not
statue that looks like a giant dick.
Yeah,
I like that.
His female Atlas statue. And I totally thought the money was going to be buried under that statue, and you'd see that as a little coda. But that's too predictable for an art film like this.
I think that women truly do lift up the world, and I think that was important as to why there was a female Atlas there. I think it was a really solid statement about Al Capone's gender. Like, he was a feminist. Like, it's always been tough for male feminists, and I think that Armand also understands that.
The best thing about Armand White's review, sort of to cap it off, is in his final paragraph he talks about he tries to draw a line between Scarface to quote Adam Schiff concocting his own felonious gangster fantasy about the president and shamelessly reading it to the congressional record. He's like saying that The Godfather led us to the fucking hashtag resistance or whatever.
That
is,
fucking
just,
rules.
Like,
oh my god, that's so good. No, but like I mean I see what he's saying about like the like gangster movies, like you said, the meme, like you're missing the point by idolizing Henry Hill. But it was just like, how fucking dumb do you have to be to watch Goodfellas and be like, yeah, get to the end of that movie and be like, yeah, I want to be like that guy? Because like what I like about Casino, Goodfellas, and Wolf of Wall Street is that essentially like the main character at the end of all those movies does essentially get away with it. And is like nothing really all that bad happens to them, and they haven't learned anything either. They're like nothing has really changed. Like he's like subverting this idea of like that like crime movies should have like a moral arc, or like the sort of like the Code era like portrayal of gangsters, or like they all like a sort of like a moral and legal framework needs to be like reimposed at the end of the movie, like because like the main character has to die or go to jail and realize the error of their ways in some way. But like everything else that they show you is just so fucking miserable and violent and like terrifying that the idea that you would like, oh, like, yeah, they're showing you that crime is free of consequences. It's like, well, tell that to Nicky Santoro and his brother. I mean, Jesus Christ.
I think that like a lot of the, it feels like a lot of the people who are like, big, blue check anti-Trump people, so to speak, like the character they really would have identified with in any of these films is like the accountant from The Untouchables, right? Like the bureaucrat who somehow brought down Al Capone on a like tax return technicality or whatever. Like that really
and then for his troubles gets shot in the face by Frank Nitti.
Yeah, and like
rest in peace, Billy Drago. By the way, R.I.P. to one of the best of all time.
And sort of to cap it off around the table, what were our like final, I guess, thoughts on Capone? Will, why don't you go first?
It's a baffling movie that I would not describe as a good movie, but it was interesting. It was like it's interesting to watch, and I just said like I think in talking about it with you guys, I have. Maybe I'll add a bag of popcorn to what my overall review would be, or I feel like Abdul, what you brought up about like it being essentially Josh Trank making a movie about himself, I thought like actually like that gave me something to like a compass point to like sort of point at to not get lost in this movie. Like there's something to grab onto there that is a little bit more satisfying than I think that this is a movie about Joe Biden. This is about the struggle of trying to get Joe Biden to appear on television and speak coherently and run for president when we all need him so badly.
So I thought that this film, I think you can skip it. I didn't think it was particularly good. I did think it was interesting. Like you said, Will, it's very baffling. But yet, I never knew where it was going to go next, and yet I was still bored the whole time, except for those moments of platypus and stuff. Those were good.
I mean, it's funny. It does keep you guessing about what's going to happen next, but then the big joke is that nothing does happen.
Exactly.
It's like a very waiting for Godot vibe. Like you just sort of stuck in limbo with, you know, a syphilitic Al Capone, his like fail family, as they're trying to figure out where some like imaginary money is. Yeah, my thoughts are pretty much in line with both of yours. I do think it'll make a really good double feature with Shoot 'Em Up, where with Clive Owens and Paul Giamatti hunting each other, and Clive Owens always munching carrots. Like you could make a really nice like carrot themed movie night and definitely include this. But as an abstract, it's fucking boring. It's interesting as a one-off. I don't ever think I'll watch it again.
I have to disagree. I thought Capone
The Armand
was great.
White of
I
our
think
pod.
Absolutely. I think this is the essential companion to Venom until we get a sequel to Venom. I think I saw value for money in seeing it. Like, I keep thinking of this moment where they're like sitting at dinner. And Al Capone is just like staring at this one guy across the table, and he's like, "Assassino, save yourselves!" And he just like jumps, and like he's just eating shit constantly for the entire movie. And like I got a laugh out of it. Josh Trank continues to like suck at almost everything he like puts his mind to. So like I have to applaud that. I think he's a really interesting figure. Yeah, this felt like a Max Landis written movie as well. I feel like it might also be a good companion to Bright, the Orc Cop movie. But I'd say, anywhere from 3 to 4 bags of popcorn. Give it a watch if you have absolutely nothing else to do.
To cap the Josh Trank thing, Will, you mentioned Miles Teller and Josh Trank. And I love this like anecdote from the set of Fantastic Four. At one point, the conflict between Josh Trank and Miles Teller nearly became physical, with Trank and Teller chest to chest, daring each other to throw the first punch.
Ooh.
Neither did.
Well, there was no one there to hold. Oh my God! I can picture this in my head. Neither of them threw the first punch because there was no one else around to break them up or hold them back, so that there was no punch thrown ever.
Just picture Michael B. Jordan just like sitting there, like confused. I mean, like everyone.
It's just like I know. This is the way this movie makes sense. Like the end, the climax of the movie, the end of the movie is him gunning down like 30 family members and day laborers with a gold-plated Tommy gun, and I just think like that was Josh Trank's fantasy about how to get out of doing Fantastic Four.
Pretty much.
And with that, we'll roll into our recommendation segment. Will, as our guest, why don't you kick us off?
All right, I'll give you 2 films that I watched last week that do warrant the fabled 5 bags of popcorn. Same director, same subject matter. They make an excellent double feature. I'm talking, of course, about Costa Gavras, Z, and State of Siege. Both of them are fantastic, excellent political thrillers. They both have they're both like very darkly funny. Both of the movies and they're both about real horrifying things that have happened in the 20th century. So I cannot recommend highly enough Z and State of Siege.
Awesome. I gotta add those to my list. My recommendation is also a film I watched 2 days ago. It's called Rebels of the Neon God. It's the debut film by Taiwanese director Tsai Ming-Ling. And it's like just a story of like 3 students in, early 90s Taiwan, when it was like becoming a post-industrial, country, and there was like an emergent like Rebel Youth Generation, stuff like that, and just like it's a really beautiful and touching story about like alienation under capitalism, under a world that's changing, and like there's nothing you can control, and the ways you like push back against it. It is. I don't really like that director. I've seen a couple of their other movies, but this one is so vital and so fast moving and so energetic and just like so. Its mood is so beautiful. And it is on the Criterion Channel if you have a sub to that. So I highly recommend it. It is 100% worth watching. That's Simon Lang's Rebels of the Neon God.
You know, I'm a big sports head. You know, I'm a big Formula One guy. So there is a fantastic sports scandal happening right now in Formula E, which is like all electronic cars. So they're not actually racing, but they're doing like this sim racing on like, you know, iRacing. Like they're basically gaming. So there's this German driver named Daniel Abt who drives for Audi. And he just got fired from the team for having a pro gamer drive for him in a charity race instead of himself. And it's the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, they all have these cameras on them, but his face was like conveniently obscured by like the wheel. And then afterwards, people were like, yeah, I don't think I was racing against Daniel. And then he had to make a YouTuber-style apology video in German after, like, getting caught by Audi. So, like, it's the funniest thing ever. And, like, yeah, it's like an interesting, like, real-world consequence for gaming, which, you know, is immoral. We've talked about it a lot on this show. But, yeah, like, it's such a dumb guy thing to do to, like, bro, I'm gonna hire a pro gamer to race for me because Daniel Abt sucks. Like, he's only placed, like, his highest position is 9th in Formula E, and it's like a very competitive sport. So yeah, if you can read more about it on therace.com, pretty good place for motorsport news. But yeah, check it out and watch his weird German apology video. You don't need to speak German to appreciate it.
Will Formula E be reimbursing me for the $100,000 that I lost, betting against Daniel Abt?
I actually had my brains blown out immediately after Daniel Abt won that race. He actually came in third. It was pretty good, but yeah, it's so funny.
So I am going to recommend the 2011 Indonesian action film, The Raid.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
I love a martial arts movie, and I hadn't seen this one. It's such a perfect action film. There's basically no setup. You're like, there's bad guys, there's the cops, let's go, fighting with knives. It's so fucking good. Oh my god.
So the raid is like, there's 2 minutes of that movie that aren't just a slaughterhouse.
Exactly.
It's that the Raid is like one of the hardest action movies ever fucking made. I might watch the Raid tonight. Jesus Christ.
The
sequel
is
fucking is
good.
amazing. The sequel is so fucking good too.
They add opera to it. Like it becomes this like grandiose, larger than life crime story that just didn't exist.
It's like
in the
Heat.
First one. Yeah, it becomes Heat, and we'll never.
It
get
becomes
the
like
third one.
Indonesian Heat. Yeah, no, they gotta complete the trilogy. God damn it.
Yeah, it's Heat without Moby, sadly.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Will Menaker approved recomradation for The Raid. Will, thank you so much for joining us. I think you're a bright young man, and you have a real future in podcasting.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
It might seem obvious, but do you have any pluggables? Anything you want to plug?
Have you guys ever heard of Chapo Trap House?
Baby.
Yeah, check out Vanderpod next time if we get around to doing another episode of it. But failing that, you can always find me on Twitter at Will Menaker and on SoundCloud at Chapo Trap House or Patreon at Chapo Trap House.
And when you're done following Chapo Trap House on Twitter and you're podcasting, you can find Kino Lefter wherever you find your podcasts. And once you're done subscribing to Kino, you can hop in the Kino Lefter Discord. As always, the link is in the show notes. It's a really wonderful community. They do like a movie and video games night every Saturday, and especially in Core, it's been popping off. Love all of you. Super, super fun and super, super wholesome.
If you can go over to www.itunes.com, you can log on to that website and give us a 5-star review. We are subjecting ourselves to movies all the time, rotting our brains to bring you this high-quality level of union-free discourse. So give us a 5-star review. We love to read them. Really does help people find the show.
And once you're done reviewing the show on iTunes, you want to go to patreon.com/Kino Lefter. We do a bonus show every week, Primo Lefter. If you start giving us $3 a month, you get access to it. We recently had a great double feature on TFW No GF and The Red Pill. And this week we fucked up again. We're doing another double feature, but we are watching both, count them both, of Hannah Gadsby's specials, Nanette and Douglas. So I haven't watched the second one yet, but I watched Nanette, and yeah, my brain is absolutely deep fried. It's in the oven. I'm got to flip it over and watch the second one.
And yeah, for all the people who are introduced and new to this show, thank you so much for listening. Hope you keep listening, and hope you have a great week. We will see you next week with another movie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Kino Lefter is part of a loose affiliation of left-wing podcasts hosted by the bilingual journalism collective Ricochet.
This network includes News You Can Use, Well Reds, Out of Left Field, Radio Free Winnipeg, 49th Parahell, and more.
Support Canadian podcasting, support Canadian media, and support Ricochet at ricochet.media. Great podcast. Check them out.